Alright, so this is something that I haven't really had the chance to talk about yet on this channel, but about a month ago, we had a gigantic crypto trading platform called FTX, and it essentially imploded in on itself after it was revealed that huge portions of the company were just running as a gigantic Ponzi scheme and essentially defrauding their customers. And we just got word today that the CEO of FTX, this character named Sam Bankman-Fried, who is quite a guy to say the least, has officially been arrested in the Bahamas for orchestrating this entire gigantic fraud. So I got a breakdown here from CoinDesk, which I think was the first outlet, at least that I saw, to break this news. So we're going to read a little bit of the details here, and then I'll give you some of the background in terms of how we got to this point. Okay, so they start off here saying FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried arrested in the Bahamas. So what are they talking about here? They say the Royal Bahamas Police Force arrested FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried, he also goes by SBF, a press statement said, and the arrest came after the U.S. filed criminal charges against SBF, the statement said, and the nation expects the U.S. to request the Bahamas extradite SBF in short order. And they got a quote here saying, as a result of the notification received and the material provided therewith, it was deemed appropriate for the Attorney General to seek SBF's arrest and hold him in custody pursuant to our nation's Extradition Act, the statement said, attributed to Attorney General Ryan Pinder. And he continued saying, at such time as a formal request for extradition is made, the Bahamas intends to process it promptly pursuant to the Bahamian law and its treaty obligations with the United States. And then a tweet from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York confirmed that prosecutors in the U.S. indicted Bankman-Fried, though the indictment remains under seal. And they continue, according to the New York Times, the charges could include wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, and related conspiracy charges. Okay, so assuming that he is going to be found guilty on even just one of these charges, but presumably all of these charges, which I think it's fair to assume that he is, this guy is going to be rotting in jail for a very long time, if not his entire life, over this entire ordeal. But they say the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, also plans to bring charges. So, I mean, it's just a big whomper on top of a whomper here. A statement from the enforcer director said, and they say in the Bahamas statement, Bahamas Prime Minister Philip Davis said that the country would continue pursuing its own investigation into FTX's collapse alongside the U.S.'s criminal charges. So he is getting charged with basically everything, and he's getting charged from multiple different angles, right? The SEC, the SDNY, the Bahamian authorities are going to be charging him with shit. So this guy is going down. Okay, so a little bit of the background here, right? They say Bankman-Fried was set to testify virtually before the House Financial Services Committee about the exchange's collapse on Tuesday. Okay, so he was just about today or tomorrow, I guess. Today's Tuesday, right? So today he was actually set to go testify about this entire collapse and about the fraud that he was participating in. So, I mean, pretty, convenient timing here that they went out and actually arrested him right before he was going to have to go give this hearing. And that would have been entertaining as fuck, to say the least, because this guy, SBF, has been, ever since FTX collapsed, parading himself around doing every single interview that he can possibly find in order to try to, protect himself and defend himself and try to play it off as if, oh, I didn't really know what was going on behind the scenes. It was just a simple accounting error, and maybe we got the accounts mixed up, and who knows what really happened, right? This guy's been trying to cover his tracks relentlessly, and so, having him go and actually testify in front of a House panel where there are actual rules, you can't just simply lie and spin the truth in those types of a setting. That would have been significantly more interesting, I think, than maybe him just getting arrested. But either way, he's not going to be testifying, it appears, at least in the House, but he probably is going to have to be testifying when these charges are actually brought against him. But they got a statement here from the committee chair, Maxine Waters, where there was also a whole bunch of backstory there where she originally didn't want to go after him and stuff, and then it seems like there was a little bit of pressure. But she said that she was surprised to hear of the arrest at the U.S. Attorney's Office's direction. Okay, so more of the background here in terms of how this all went down. They say Bankman-Fried will appear in court on Tuesday in the Bahamas, and Mark Cohen, Bankman-Fried's attorney, did not immediately return a request for comment, and FTX fell last month after a CoinDesk report revealed that Alameda Research, a sister company also founded by Bankman-Fried, held a large number of FTT tokens, which are issued by FTX. Okay, so keep in mind, I'm not a crypto bro. I am not, like, this is not my area of expertise in terms of breaking down the details of how cryptocurrencies work and why this was such a corrupt a setup that he had here. But essentially what it looks like is that he had FTX, that crypto exchange platform where you can trade a bunch of different currencies and stuff like that, and basically hold your assets there within his platform. Then he also had this other company called Alameda Research, where there was also a bunch of like bizarre shit going on behind the scenes, where like the CEO that he put in charge of Alameda was somebody who he was like on and off again in a relationship with, and they had this whole like weird thing going on in the Bahamas. I mean, you know, you can do whatever you want, have fun, you know, not going to judge anybody, but they had this whole like polycule thing going on in the Bahamas where there was a bunch of them and they were hooking up with each other. They were all part of one big like orgy fest or whatever the fuck was going on. And it appears like he basically put a bunch of people in these top positions at these companies who were just like engaging in a gigantic circle jerk, metaphorically and maybe literally, in order to defraud potentially thousands and thousands of customers that were participating on this platform. And so basically what happened is that you had customers who would put their real money into this FTX trading platform, and one of the guarantees that FTX was giving them was that we are not going to go take your money and use it on risky investments or, you know, shipping it off to Alameda for them to go make their risky investments within their portfolios. And essentially he lied to them, and they were in fact using customer funds in order to go fund some of these risky investments. And then you know, with some of the reporting that came out with FTX, the increased collapsing of multiple different cryptocurrencies and the exposing of some of the fraud that was going on behind the scenes, the exposing of how Alameda Research was making all of these risky investments and they weren't paying off. There were a lot of questions that were building up, and basically the bottom fell out of this entire operation. Then you had a bunch of people who tried to pull their money out of FTX, and because Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX lied to them, they didn't have the capital, they didn't have the assets necessary in order to be able to actually pay people out, and so the entire thing just crumbled into a million pieces. So that's just basically the rundown in terms of how I have interpreted this, but they give a little bit more info. They say FTX filed for bankruptcy just over a month ago. Its new CEO, John J. Ray III, said in court filings and prepared congressional testimony that he had never seen anything quite like the corporate governance and documentation failures that he found at FTX. And they say, among other issues, he found that FTX had heavily commingled customer and corporate assets, again, what I was just describing there, losing billions of dollars along the way. And in his prepared remarks published earlier Monday, he said his new team had managed to secure about $1 billion of company assets to date. So, you know, hopefully the people who lost a bunch of money on this, especially like some of the, you know, not the larger traders, but some of just the average people who got roped into this entire Ponzi scheme, hopefully they're going to be able to get at least a fraction of their money back. But honestly, because of the way that they structured this, because of the way that it collapsed, I honestly think that a lot of people are just going to be completely left hanging out to dry as a result of this. So, I mean, it really does suck for all of the people who got screwed over by this entire situation. But they finish off here saying, for his part, Bankman-Fried went on a press tour after leaving his company, speaking to the New York Times, New York Magazine, Vox, and numerous other outlets, and he spoke at a Twitter Spaces and in a live Forbes interview earlier on Monday. And this is stuff where it's like, you know, some of the interviews that he was doing, people would straight up ask him, like, do you think that, you know, your lawyers would be okay with you doing this interview right now? And he just straight up would be like, no, they say that it's a terrible idea, it's a bad idea. And basically, again, he was going on all of these different platforms trying to pretend as if he's just like this innocent guy. And also keep in mind, I mean, all of these different major corporate media outlets and all of these, you know, some gigantic companies like I think Vanguard and all of these, and like, you know, a couple other huge investment platforms or investment firms were backing this guy and hyping him up and saying he's the new genius, he's the crypto, you know, the future of the crypto sphere and all of that. So this is somebody who had built up quite a reputation among like elite spheres and stuff like that. And so, you know, he's going out on all of these platforms, he's going and giving all of these interviews and trying to basically launder his reputation and hang on to any bit of credibility that he could possibly muster up. And essentially it was a complete flop. And especially I would recommend you guys go check out not only the interview that we just did on Breaking Points with this guy named CoffeeZilla on YouTube. He has been tracking this entire story for a long time. He does lots of different stories covering different different frauds and crypto scams and all of that stuff. So highly recommend his channel and some of the interviews that he got done with SBF, where in one of them he basically got SBF to straight up admit to the fraud, and he can explain it a lot better than I can in terms of the actual background on how all of this crypto stuff works. But a little bit more, just this was honestly hilarious that this came out, but apparently according here to the New York Post, they say Sam Bankman-Fried wrongly predicted that he wouldn't be arrested just hours before his bust. Okay, so again, he was going around on all of these different platforms. He thought he was going to basically be able to talk his way out of this, and it kind of plays into, I guess, his ego, maybe his narcissism, maybe, because this is a guy who had essentially built up this ideology or this idea about what he called effective altruism, and he was one of the biggest proponents of effective altruism. And essentially what he meant by that is, we, the billionaire class, we, the extremely wealthy elites within this country and around the world, we are the bulwarks in terms of protecting the future of society, and it's much better off for the money to be in our hands, because then we can use it for positive investments in society and improving people's material conditions and all of this. It's basically just the same exact concept as billionaire charity or billionaire donations just being like, number one, money laundering schemes, but number two, and more importantly, PR and reputation laundering schemes, where it's like, pretending as if the way that we have structured our economy, where a handful of people have the same amount of wealth or more wealth than the bottom 90% of the country, acting as if that is somehow an okay situation because they're going to return the money to the people by engaging in these altruistic acts and all of that. It's 100% bullshit. And even in some of these interviews, Sam Bankman-Fried actually admitted that this entire effective altruism shtick that he was putting forward was complete bullshit. So, I mean, he just straight up admitted it, but it's just another reminder that you should never trust billionaires, regardless of where they're coming from, whether it's, somebody like Elon Musk, who is also just a snake oil salesman and a con man, or whether it's somebody within the crypto sphere. Any billionaire or any extremely wealthy person who is pretending as if they are going to be the saviors for humanity, they are going to be the people who are improving everybody's lives, it's complete nonsense. It's complete bullshit. And you should never, buy into their propaganda that they are putting out, and never trust a billionaire at face value. They simply should not exist. That type of a distribution of money and power is not something that is going to breed a stable country or a stable democracy or anything remotely close to that. Okay, so another funny thing that was apparently involved in this, now I can't 100% fact check this and say whether or not it's true or not, but I'm just going to go ahead and believe that it's true, because honestly, with the rampant lying that we have been seeing throughout this entire event going on with Sam Bankman-Fried and how easily it seems like he's able to lie, he's denying this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. They say here from Financial Review that FTX's inner circle had a secret group chat called wire fraud. So, I mean, listen, again, he denies it. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I think it's just kind of funny that, even a possibility that, these people who are just like young, maybe early 20s or late 20s or something. I don't know how exactly old they are, but they were all pretty young people who were, owners and CEOs and executives at these multi-billion-dollar international companies. And essentially they had no fucking idea what they were doing. They thought that they would be able to get away with this just rampant fraud, this rampant corruption. And, if they had a group chat called wire fraud and they were maybe just playing it off as a joke or something like that, I think that's just honestly absolutely hilarious. But, something else that I took away from this that I think was especially nefarious, and I think that was especially disgusting coming from SBF, is that as he was doing this entire media tour and trying to launder his reputation and protect himself, maybe even legally, even though the interviews are probably going to be used against him within these legal cases, but regardless, one of the more disgusting things that he was going around saying was, number one, that he didn't know that this was all going on behind the scenes, that he was just unaware of it, and maybe it was a mistake, and he's new to this whole thing, and whatever. And basically another thing that he was coming out and saying is that his goal was just, I just want to make the customers whole. Okay, so this has been something that he has been repeating relentlessly. He's been going around, he's saying, listen, it's not even about me at this point. I don't care what happens to me. I just want to make sure that everybody who lost money ends up getting their money back. And the reason why I say that this is especially nasty coming from him is because if you look at the actual court filings that they brought against this guy, okay, this wasn't somebody who was just like, maybe sort of like a distant CEO who wasn't really keeping track with all of the different accounts, and maybe somebody else was working behind the scenes and really pulling off this fraud, or maybe it was just some big mishap or mistake or miscommunication or something like that. It's complete nonsense. If you look at the actual court filings and the charges they're bringing against him, it's like not only was the company FTX engaging in all of this fraud and lying to customers and using their money on risky investments that didn't pay off, and risking this entire operation collapsing, which it obviously inevitably did, but not only all of that, but SBF himself knew about it, number one, and number two, then tried to basically conceal it and cover it up as it was going on, and then number three, went out and brazenly lied about it repeatedly after it got exposed. Okay, so this guy is not some innocent actor. He's not somebody who just, I got accidentally caught up in something and it ran away from me or something. No, this guy is a rampant fraud. He is a snake oil salesman. He somehow managed to convince a huge portion of the elite class within this country that he's the new big guy for the future of crypto and he should be the face of crypto. And it immediately collapsed, or not immediately, but it inevitably collapsed because all of this is just so glaringly fraudulent. And, obviously, again, I'm not the expert on crypto, and maybe some portion of my audience is, invested in crypto or something like that. But, I think I can't legally give you guys advice financially here on YouTube. So I'll say this is not financial advice. But my take on the entire crypto sphere is that it basically comes off to me as a complete fucking Ponzi scheme at face value. And the reason why I say that is that if you look at something like Wall Street, which I talk about all the time on this channel, it's very clearly bloated, it's corrupted, it's disgusting, it is wildly speculative and all of that, and it's not stable to some degree. We have crashes every couple of years. All of that can be true, but what's also true is that what Wall Street traders do, they're somewhat based in reality. Why? Because you have companies that you're trading on, right? If you're talking about Tesla, if you're talking about Apple, if you're talking about Chevron, whatever the company may be, there are some actual hard economic assets that are backing up that valuation, even if it is bloated, even if it is, overvalued and speculative to a large degree, which it definitely is, but there's something there that is grounded in reality to back up that economic valuation. And not only that, but you also have the US dollar as a fiat currency, which is, not just an inherently speculative asset, right? I know I talk about on this channel modern monetary theory very frequently, and we get into all of the debates surrounding that, and how, money to some extent is just kind of like a made up concept that we invented, but at the same time, there is real stuff that's backing up the value and the stability of the US dollar. Things like the US military, things like the entire actual hard physical US economy and our output and our trade volume and all of that, that all combines into actually making some hard economic value, right? It's not just entirely speculative. And so the vibe that I get from crypto, regardless of which coin you want to talk about, is that it's not really grounded in anything that is going to inherently make it stable in the long run. Essentially, what you're betting on is that you are constantly going to have an influx in capital within these cryptocurrencies. You are constantly going to have an expanding pool of people who are participating in this and continuing to put more money in it in order to make sure that the valuation keeps going up. And the second that stalls out, or the second that you have some big traders who pull large chunks out of the market, then it inevitably is going to collapse. And maybe it'll rebound, and then maybe it'll collapse again. It's just wild speculation. It's almost as if you took the worst aspects of Wall Street speculation and Wall Street trading and Wall Street corruption and just bundled it into one thing, and then you're trying to turn around and spin it off and pretend as if this is something that is going to replace fiat currencies. It's not. I mean, it generally, just hypothetically, I kind of like the idea of cryptocurrencies in the sense that it's like, okay, it's not the same centralized currency. There's a lot more freedom in terms of how you can make payments, who you can make payments to, making sure that it's all vetted, especially with something like Bitcoin or anything that has the blockchain technology. I can see definitely a lot of the benefits or the reasons why people would back cryptocurrencies or think that this is a good idea generally. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at how cryptocurrencies have been over the last couple of years, as more and more people are starting to get into this, as more and more gigantic financial players, including people that come from Wall Street, are getting into this entire speculation, it's like the inevitable result of this is that they are going to crash one day, okay? Maybe they'll bounce back. There are these wild fluctuations, but when they do crash, understand something. You as an average trader, you as somebody who has maybe a couple $1,000s or maybe even more than that within one of these cryptocurrencies, when they collapse, you are going to be the one who gets fucked, okay? It's not going to be the gigantic, billionaires or the millionaires who are controlling huge swaths of the cryptocurrencies, okay? They are not going to get fucked. They are going to be the ones who pull their money out first and fuck you, okay? So, I mean, again, my general takeaway is probably stay away from crypto if you can possibly avoid it. I think all of this shit is wild and speculative and completely erratic. And, this latest FTX collapse is just a glimpse into that world, honestly, because this was a guy who is touted as the face of cryptocurrencies. FTX was touted as like the future of crypto trading. It was one of the largest trading platforms, if not the single largest trading platform. And if that can collapse overnight, I mean, if that can collapse within a day and have billions of dollars flooding out of this thing, then it's like, maybe it's not something that we should be putting our full stock in and trusting as the future of monetary value or the future of our economies.
Everyone is saying GoodPoliticGuy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying